I was reminded the other day of a rather neat example of creative problem solving, which nicely showcases the very elegant process of reversal as the idea generation process. The technique works like this. You start with a problem definition, which will have gone through some sort of problem exploration process, so you end up with a redefined problem that nicely captures the very essence of the issue. You then move into a problem reversal phase, where you take that problem definition and rather than trying to make an issue better, you reframe it in just the opposite sense, where it's trying to make the issue worse. Rather bizarre first step, but you're not trying to make it a little bit worse, you're trying to make it extremely worse, so it's kind of an over-reversal, if you like. Now we're in the divergent phase, where we're suspending judgment and trying to stimulate the creative juices, and you brainstorm as many ideas as possible, as many solutions to the reverse problem. So you're now generating outrageous ideas on how to make the situation worse. You then identify and isolate the most ridiculous of those solutions, explore it a little bit, understand why it works so well in addressing the reversed issue, and move into the convergent phase by starting to reverse that solution. So gently urging it back to focus on the original problem definition. And that double reversal process is the elegance, if you like, that effectively it means that you're coming back at the original problem from a completely different perspective, and hopefully will stimulate novel and useful ideas on the back of that. The problem that we were addressing was brought to us by the health and safety manager, and an issue that I think will be echoed by a number of organisations. It was, in what way might we guarantee immediate and total evacuation following a fire alarm? We reversed that problem definition and ended up with, in what way might we guarantee that no one ever leaves the building given a fire alarm sounding? Started brainstorming freely around that, and one of the neat reversals, if you like, was that we thought that when the alarm goes off, well, why don't we, rather than sounding a trigger that would send people out, why don't we keep people in? Why don't we have some sort of music playing that is, I don't know, a seductive lullaby maybe that glues people to their seats, or maybe the greatest hits of Elvis or the Beatles, something that will urge people to stay in, to listen on for whatever period of time the music's actually playing for. We then looked at reversing that and said, well, rather than playing something that glues people to their seats, why don't we make sure that when the alarm sounds, no one at all could possibly stay within the building? And we ended up with a remarkably simple solution, which is, why don't we just turn up the volume on the alarm? Not just turn the volume up a little bit, really turn up the volume so that it generates a hugely grating sound that no one would want to stay in the building any longer than they needed to for. And so you'd end up with a mass evacuation as effectively and neatly and quickly as possible. Kind of an odd solution, because it almost feels trivial when we look at it in isolation, but it's often the case that when you end up with a novel and useful idea and look back at the original problem definition, it looks somewhat obvious. You end up with a direct line of sight. But there are obviously mental blocks in the way that prevent people from identifying this when they're sitting at the problem without having gone through the creative process. So that unblocking process is neatly demonstrated using this technique. Rather neat, I think.